don't know. I don't know what kind of weapon that is.
Good church shape.
We're gonna see if it's open inside for the museum tour. Propeller blades? I don't know what those are. What they're called. Anchor?
Go inside the submarine, I'd like to go over a brief history and some safety rules as well. For safety-wise, when we're inside, just ask that you don't pull any levers, push any buttons, turn any knobs or any valves or anything like that. She is a fully functioning warship, and if you pull the right lever, it's not that she'll take off on us. She can and will dive one final time, though. She is no longer watertight, and if she sinks, she will sink up to about halfway, 3/4 of the way up that tower there. She can and will sink that far. She is sinking about 50 feet of water. And on top of that, she is no longer watertight. So, I don't know about you guys, but I can't breathe underwater, so let's not have that happen. Also, when you're in there as well, be careful and watch out where you guys walk. There are a lot of low-lying pipes, valves, and levers sticking down from the ceiling, out from the walls, and even up from the floor as well. Trust me, not a day goes by where somebody will. April 3rd of 1944 into the United States Navy. She was stationed in Pearl Harbor from 1944 all the way up until 1970. During that time, she did see action in World War II and also in Vietnam. In fact, during World War II, she went on 5 war patrols, sinking 18 Japanese ships, and she was also one of 12 submarines present in Tokyo Bay to witness the surrender ceremonies at the end of the war. And in Vietnam, she went on 4 more patrols off the coast of North Vietnam, picking up about a dozen to 2 dozen pilots that were shot down off the coast during the Vietnam War. After the Vietnam War was over with for her in 1971, she was decommissioned from our service and given to the nation of Turkey. So that's why we fly the Turkish flag on top of the sail next to the U.S. flag. They used her from 1971 all the way up until 2002, going on war patrols against the Soviet Union. When they finally decommissioned her, originally the Turkish government was going to break her down for scrap metal. Luckily, when she was sent to the scrap yards, she sat there for 2 years untouched until the middle of 2004. which is when we, the city of North Little Rock, found her and worked with the Turkish government on getting her back from Istanbul, Turkey, to here.
Oh, wow.
Those plans were completed a year later in 2005, which is when they finished towing her up the Arkansas River and permanently mooring her here for the guided tours that we have to this day.
There's like a sub that are like for surveillance and all that.
That's generally what submarines do, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Your modern submarines mainly, well, I won't say mainly, but are used for stealth missions and stuff like that today. Now, if you guys will follow me, we'll go down this ladder here and go into the after torpedo room. Like the two that you see on your left and right. And we also have 15 bunks in here for the crew members who are stationed inside this room. And so, yes, at times you did sleep on top of, next to, and sometimes below one of these torpedoes here.
These are the bunk beds where they can sleep.
Out of the back end of the submarine. We would also have them up front in our forward torpedo room as well.
Oh, wow.
So you would be able to fire them out of both ends of the submarine. Yep. Forward and backwards. Unlike your newer torpedoes today, which are essentially smart torpedoes, they can find their own targets. Your old torpedoes that you have, like back here, basically the giant bullets. Once you fired them, they're on their own. They won't be able to guide themselves or anything like that, and you just fire them off into a line, and you always have to make sure that you're pointed.
Whoa. So how did you do it?
Yeah, so
what are these levers here?
Is your maneuvering room. It controls
Oh,
the speed of the submarine, but your actual steering is up in the control room.
Oh, but the forward and backward is here. Can the sub go backward?
Yeah. So it more or less is in here, yes, but actually your control room, that's where everything is really done at, is in the front end of the submarine,
Oh,
which
wow.
we're going through. But if you guys follow me, we'll be going. This room here is your after engine room, and the blue things on your left and right are your diesel engines that are used to provide the power for the submarine. These are made by Fairbanks Morris, so yes, the freight train company, known for making diesel locomotives. They were able to adapt those to fit inside our submarine. If you are curious, you are looking at about 118,000 gallons worth of diesel fuel kept on board to keep these guys going while you're out on patrol.
Wow.
How many engines again? Two
here and one
two
in the
in
next room that we'll be going into. In fact, actually, when you guys come into this next room here, watch your step. There's a little ledge that's sticking out of the side here. So just be careful and watch out for that. I've had a couple of folks trip on that in the past. But we'll go into the forward engine room next here. But this room here is your forward engine room, and like we were talking about before, this is your #1 diesel engine right here. And on the other side of the room, we actually have a backup generator right over here. They would use that to produce power for the submarine in the event your main engines went offline. In fact, that same idea, that same concept is still used to this day on board your modern submarines. Quite literally, actually, with your nuclear submarines on top of their reactors, and I'm being serious about that, quite literally on top of the reactors, they have a compartment that'll have 4 of these diesel engines on board. That way, if the main reactors go offline, at least you can still provide power to the submarine with your backup diesel engines. Well, they got that from us. In fact, even it's not just for submarines are like that, but also a lot of surface ships are like that as well. A lot of your larger surface vessels, for a prime example actually, is your nuclear-powered aircraft carriers that you have today. Yes, they have a nuclear reactor to provide the power for the ship, but also they will actually have the old-fashioned diesel engines, much like they had on board the USS Enterprise, the World War II aircraft carrier. They had those on board so that way, if the reactor goes offline, yeah, you can produce more power.
Have they had to use the diesel power as a backup already?
On a lot of ships nowadays, they will do that for testing. They do that to test the crew members to make sure that everyone's up to date, everyone's aware of how to off space.
Oh, wow.
So these guys are running practically 80 to 90% of the time as well.
Do they also have pistons like a normal diesel engine? Or?
That cylinder that you see right there on
This
top
one?
of it, yeah,
Oh,
that
okay.
is one of the pistons.
How many pistons
20.
are there? 20.
Yep.
On each of these?
Yep,
20?
10 pistons. There's 10 on top, 10 on bottom. They are opposed. Like the V-shaped engines that you find in your car.
How much horsepower would they produce?
You're looking about 4,000 horsepower per engine.
Per engine?
Yep. Of the submarine.
Galleys where they have like a cafeteria?
Yes.
Right down.
Oh, wow. Wow. So if you have a nightmare, you suddenly hit your head.
Yep. You might have a nightmare and it'll hit your head, but it'll knock you right back out to sleep.
Once the submarine is moving out in sea, do you feel it?
Oh yeah. Just like being on a surface vessel, except you'll feel it a lot more because, as a lot of sailors like to describe it, you essentially are a little cork out in the vast ocean.
What about when you're underwater? How do they? Is it the same way? They still feel that they're underwater and stuff?
You will feel it, but nowhere near as much compared to where you're on the surface. So, from what I've heard a lot of folks tell me, is essentially it feels like you're on a rocking chair, a small little sway back and forth, but beyond that, that's it. Compared to being at the surface of the ocean, where you're essentially a tin can or a little cork bobbing up and down, swaying left and right in the ocean. But in here, this is the galley of the submarine, which is where the enlisted men would eat and have their recreational time. The officers have their own eating quarters, which we will be able to see on the tour. We do have down below, so this hatch in the floor there, that is your refrigerator and freezer, which is where you kept all of your cold and frozen foods down there. Now, that's all your perishable goods. Your non-perishable goods you'd have scattered anywhere and everywhere that you could place it. Because when you're trying to feed a crew size of 90 people for 3 to 4 months, you had to have a lot of food to keep the guys going. So like I said, if there's any available spot, you'd put something there. And even in some situations, actually, these hallways that we've been walking on, at times you'd be walking on a layer of canned goods. Now also, coming back into here with recreational time, normally what they would have for recreation is basically what they could bring with them on board the submarine. And unfortunately, it was not a whole lot. The rucksacks that they had were not like what you see in the movies, where you could practically fit a whole another person inside them. The rucksacks that they had were essentially small duffel bags. And what you could fit inside those bags is what you're bringing on patrol. So normally, it's basically the clothes that you walked in on the submarine are the same clothes that you'll be walking off of. They wouldn't do any laundry or anything like that because they just didn't have the facilities or the space to put that on board our submarine. We have 3 stovetops in here, 2 ovens, and a deep fryer. So you weren't limited as to what you could or couldn't cook because of the actual equipment on board. And luckily, with eating-wise on board the submarine, it's whatever you guys wanted to have, as long as you had the supplies on board. Which the Navy would go out of their way to give you the good stuff as well. Once again, keep the crew morale high. Give them the good stuff, right?
Spam.
So, that's actually a final resort.
would be hard for really tall people to work in the sub.
To a certain extent, yes. So running around, you know, bump heads and stuff like that are pretty frequent.
So this is the actual
Control room. Yep.
control room. Oh, wow.
But this is the control room. In fact, right here, the small silver steering wheel, that is the helm station of the submarine. Whereas those red steering wheels in the back of the room there, those are used to dive the submarine, to surface and submerge the submarine. Which is also why above them there's a large white and yellow depth gauge that go down to 165 feet. It tells you how far down you are in shallow water. So for instance, if you're in port, or if you're just leaving port, you'd use those. Whereas the small one in the center here goes down to 500 feet. That is her main depth gauge. And 500 feet actually is her maximum safety depth that she can go. Now also, coming back to the front of the room, this device here is part of your sonar equipment. It's what you use to hear and see other submarines and warships out in the ocean around you. But it's, as you can see, it's not quite like what you see in the movies. In reality, what you're seeing in the movies is radar. It's a large black screen with a green line going around in a circle and a blip will pop up. In reality, with radar, if you actually submerge that equipment below the surface of the ocean, the water would cause so much interference that would reduce that range down to about 100 or so feet around the equipment itself. But with sonar, you're actually listening to the noises that are being generated outside of our submarine. Noise actually travels farther in the ocean than it does in the air. So you're actually listening into the noises coming from any propellers, engines out in the ocean around you, stuff like that. You can also even actually hear sounds coming from aquatic life as well. A lot of folks ask that, saying, oh, can they hear fish and stuff? Yes, they can. Hear dolphins, they can hear fish, they can hear whales and stuff like that out in the ocean. In fact, actually, with how powerful that equipment is, you can hear stuff coming from the ocean floor as well. So yes, actually underwater volcanoes, thermal vents, yeah, if you want to go around that way. But underwater volcanoes, thermal vents and stuff like that, you can pick up all that noise with your sonar equipment. In fact, actually, there was one sonar technician that I spoke to, as he described it, essentially it's a whole other alien world coming from down below the surface of the ocean.
But that's the front, right?
Yes.
But the control is...
that's to dive the submarine. Luckily, the submarine came back up just fine, as well as the crew members, but they knew that if they tried to get the submarine to go back down below again, that the hull would implode, because there was so much pressure previously placed on it, it just damaged the hull.
Is this a compass?
Yep, ship's compass. You'll have
This is where they have the armory.
officers' staterooms, like for instance the captain's stateroom, and passing by your chief petty officer staterooms back there. The first room you passed by on the back was your yeoman's office, who was essentially the secretary of the submarine. Took care of all the paperwork for the sub. And also, their eating area can be found in here as well, which is actually right through here. The ward room is where the officers and the captain would eat and have their recreational time as well. So yes, they did eat and have their recreational periods separate from the enlisted men. But they would come in here and do all that in here. But still, on occasion, you'd actually find a couple of them eating with the enlisted men, and also sometimes going down there as well and having their recreational time with the enlisted men, just because of sheer convenience. In reality, when there was no real separation between officers and enlisted men other than sleeping quarters, still you had enlisted men working through here, working and walking through here at all times and hours, all time of the day. Well, beyond rank and pay, what was really separating you from the new guys and vice versa, other than rank and pay on board a submarine, right? Now, when we come into this next room here, your forward torpedo room, watch your step. You will be stepping off of a box, so just be careful and watch your step.
stepdad.
Yeah, we'll go on forward. But this room here is your forward torpedo room, and for the most part, it's pretty much the same as the after torpedo room. Major difference is you held more torpedoes and less people in here. 16 of your 24 torpedoes were held in here, next to 10 more beds for the enlisted men who were stationed inside this room as well. Also in the front there, we have more torpedo tubes, and you can see we left the two on the top open. The one on the right has a Mark 48 torpedo inside, which is a standard torpedo used today on the surface Navy. Whereas the one on the left there, we left empty to show you still how far down you have to go until you reach the actual front end of the submarine itself. Also inside that left tube there, you may notice there is that gray rack. That gray rack is not used for the torpedo, but for the new guy who has to go in there and clean out the inside of the torpedo tube. So you better not be claustrophobic.
So from there they go on this,
Yep.
and then they slide it down through.
All manually done too. About a 12-man process to load up one torpedo, and it will take them about 20 minutes.
How heavy is one?
Over 4,000 pounds. So it's not like what you see in the movies where it's two guys and they get it done within a matter of seconds, you know, snap of the finger and they're ready to go. In reality, it's a 12-man process to manually push them into the tubes there, and it will take them about 20 or so minutes to do that as well.
There would be torpedoes down here too.